Would you join me in prayer? May the words of my mouth and the meditations of each one of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our salvation. Amen. In his book, Barking to the Choir, The Power of Radical Kinship, Father Gregory Boyle, founder of Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles, writes about the lessons that he has learned from former gang members. They're lessons about faith, lessons about compassion, lessons about enduring power found in kinship. He writes, in a recent magazine Q&A, Whoopi Goldberg was asked the name of the living person she most admired, and she answered Pope Francis. And then she paused for a second and added, he's going with the original program, and that's what I like. The original program. You know, we all know what that means, don't we? The original program. It's the one that Jesus brings. It's the gospel of joy. It's always about being mindful of those who are hurting, those who are in pain, those who are in greatest need of help. It's about going to the margins and knowing that if we stand there, the margins are erased. It's about standing in the right place with those who are excluded and those who are demonized. It's about being with the people who need you. And these people who step into this do it without hesitation, the ones who are following the original program. They know what really matters, and they know what really doesn't matter. They inspire us, and we follow them because they follow the original program. Father Boyle was inspired in his life by one such person. He was a Jesuit priest named Father Pedro Arrupe. Father Arrupe was in Japan as a minister with the Jesuits when Hiroshima was bombed. And he immediately went to Hiroshima in the aftermath, running into the bomb's wreckage, only to cast his lot with those facing unthinkable suffering. He inspired a whole generation of Jesuits and other young priests to do the same, to run toward the place where the bomb has dropped rather than the other direction. Father Arrupe lived his life being available to people. Once in Brazil, Father Boyle writes, he met a poor man who invited him to dinner in his home in the nearby favela. He had a gift that he wanted to give to the priest, so he took him by the hand and led Father Arrupe to his home, which in the abject poverty of this place, the abject poverty of which overwhelmed Father Arrupe. It took his breath away and brought him to tears. The priest went into the home, and as he stood there, he looked at one of the walls, and there was no window, just a huge hole in the wall. And through that hole, you could see the sunset. And the man turned to him and he said, "This is the gift I have for you. This is the view I see every night at sunset." This man, wrapped in the love of God, understood the original program. To connect to the original program, we need to look no further than today's gospel lesson. After all, the original program is contained in the original program book. You know, it's in our pews, this thing right here. We call it the Holy Bible. And especially it shines through in the four Gospels. In Luke 15, 1 through 10, Jesus is faced by those who are judging him. They are on his case because he eats with sinners and tax collectors. Now let's be real clear about this. They're talking about big-time sinners here, the ones we all know and we can name, right? We're all sinners, but I mean, they're talking about the real big sinners and tax collectors. So there they go. They're on his case about going to dinner there. Well, if you know anything, and you shared this with us a few weeks ago, Jesus loved to eat. So you say dinner time, and he's there. He's not saying, who's inviting me? He just says, where are we going, right? He was that way. He responds by showing that God's unstoppable goodness is in fact the true foundation for all of life. That's how he responds to this. God points us to joy, and as God seeks out the one who is lost and returned to the flock, it is joy that it embraces that moment. What may appear to be on the surface a very foolish act by the shepherd is in fact an act of sheer and pure love. Going after the one, risking everything for that one, life and livelihood, the whole flock for that one, that's what we're called to do, to find the lost. The same is true with the woman in search of the lost coin. She turns the house upside down to find this one coin. Seeking the lost is the issue here. It's not about the silver. It's about what's going on to show that you have to bring it all back together. The true joy, the togetherness you were referring to. In speaking through the parables to the judging Pharisees, Jesus is addressing their judgment with joy. But he is also talking to each and every one of us. That's what makes the gospel so powerful. That's why they survived all these thousands of years, because they have something to say to all of us right now. He shows us all that we need to learn to drop the burden of our judgments, reconciling that with the mind that wants to separate, with a heart that wants to hold together. How do you bring those two together? Dropping this enormous inner burden of judgment allows us to make ourselves right with God, who wants the world to ultimately be this: people who stand in awe. Judgment, after all, takes up the room in each of us that needs to be there for loving one another. When judgment takes up the heart, it breaks the heart. When love does, it holds the heart together. Standing in joy, dropping judgment, seeking the love of God is the heart of the original program. When joy is embraced, when judgments are dropped, when love prevails, we reach a new level of healing and forgiveness. When we carry our anger, when we cling to our judgments, when love is given little room in our hearts, we keep away from healing and forgiveness. Each of us needs to return to the original program. Myself, all of us. We need to trust God to guide us. We need to forgive ourselves and one another. We need to seek healing over prolonged judgment and unexplainable judgments, remembering that we are caught, and when we are caught in spirals of judgment, we leave no room for love. This lesson is taught today by Jesus. He switches. He has this ability to switch the focus from judging to joy. So let's follow him into joy and leave judgment in the dust behind us. I want to end with another thought today, something I've been saving this since July. Now, those of you who know me know I don't do well at saving things a long time. But in July, I saw the ESPY Awards, and I heard this story, and I want to share it with you on this Patriots Day 2022. It has to do with core values that we have. It has to do with doing the right thing. It has to do with Patriots Day. And it comes through clearly in this story of one of our greatest American patriots and heroes. Someone in the last 21 years who's done more to save our country than almost anyone. She's probably not known to many of you, but as I said, I became aware of her this past July. Her name is Gretchen Evans. She understands this part of the original program, that is, to lay down your life for your friends. On this Patriots Day, the story of retired Army Commander Sergeant Major Gretchen Evans is inspirational. She is a true American hero. Prior to her retirement due to combat injuries, Evans was responsible for more than 30,000 ground troops in Afghanistan and is one of the most decorated female veterans in United States history. And yet we don't know her name. As I said earlier today, this should be written in every history book that every child reads. She served our nation in the War on Terror with 9 deployments overseas in Afghanistan and Iraq. A 27-year veteran, Sergeant Major Evans experienced loss of hearing and traumatic brain injuries and PTSD from wounds in combat. During her recovery from all of this, Sergeant Major Evans hit the lowest point in her life. She tells this in her book on Leading from the Front. But as she reached that point, it was her faith in God, her faith in other people, in the soldiers around her, in her friends and family that led her to rise again. In her rising, Sergeant Major Evans founded a program called Team Unbroken, which is a group of veterans and civilians who have experienced life-altering injuries and illnesses or traumas, and they participate in adventure races worldwide. The winner of the 2022 Pat Tillman Award for Service told her moving story at the ESPY Awards earlier this summer, and I encourage you all to Google this and watch it, but just not in the next 2 minutes. It's about a 7-minute video. You will love it. You'll be moved by it on this Patriots Day. I hope everybody watches it. In her words, Sergeant Major Gretchen Evans tells of a battle on a mountain in Afghanistan, which her soldiers were losing. They were surrounded and faced with possible annihilation. She said, "I talked to the troops. I said, we can stay right here and we can try to hold on for reinforcements, or we can try to take the top of that mountain, which would give us the better terrain to defend ourselves." And as she told them, as she tells the story, the decision is mine. She's the commander, not them. But she tells them, this is what we've got to do. So they went. They went to the top of the mountain, and they decided that would be where they made their last stand. She said, "We were running low on ammo, and I said, this is not looking good." All of them took out their magazines from their guns. They stacked them in a pile and shared what they had, and she said, "Okay, let's bring it." And then she heard, as she said, the most beautiful sound I've ever heard in my life, the sound of an Apache helicopter. Only a soldier would appreciate that sound. Apaches flew over, they fired missiles on the enemy troops that had been pursuing us, and they took care of that. And she finishes by saying, "As we pulled away, I thought to myself, I have just spent a lifetime on that mountain. I left 3 of the best men I have ever known on that mountain, and I actually left a part of myself on that mountain." As they were leaving the mountain, she went to the pilot and said, "Thank you for saving us." And he said, "Sergeant Major, we were listening to you all morning on the radio. We were not going to leave you on that mountain." And I said to him, thank you, I appreciate you. You don't know how much I appreciate you, I really do." And his response was, "That's my job. That's what I do. That's my job. That's what I do." Wow. As followers of Jesus Christ, we have to figure out what our job is. We have to figure out what we do. Are we following the original program of compassion and love and joy, or have we lost track of the program? If we've lost track of it, I encourage you to start over. Go to the Gospel of John, begin again. There's no place better than the first verse of the first chapter of the Gospel of John. In the beginning, right? God created. I encourage you to read Matthew, Mark, and Luke and rediscover your baptismal calling for you, for your sake. Now, if you haven't lost track of the original program, good for you. This is also your chance to go back and read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You see, there's a theme here. The Gospels will lead us back to where we need to be, always. You see where I'm going? No matter who we are or where we are on life's journey, we all are in need of healing and forgiveness in our lives. We all need to read the gospel of joy and love all over again. In the coming weeks, together, we will seek revival and renewal in the love of God found in the Gospels. We will explore kinship and healing, tenderness and trustworthiness. We will deepen our commitments to kindness and compassion, to hope and to love. My sermons and teachings will focus on Jesus' original program, and I hope that you can join me for the next weeks of preaching and teaching with the gospel as our guide as we return to Jesus' original program. Bring friends and family, bring neighbors and coworkers as we turn to rejoicing and return to God. As we do this, we will find that we'll figure out what our job is, just like that copter pilot who saved Major Sergeant Evans on the mountaintop and her soldiers. We'll figure out what it is we're here to do. And that's a good thing. Thanks be to God.